Welcome back to The Sweat. I'm your host, Jesse Cofield, joined by DraftKings contributor Tim Finnegan. This is UFC Chase or Fade. So, Tim, agree or disagree with the following statements about this weekend's UFC Fight Night in Vegas? So, we're focusing on the main card for Saturday's UFC Fight Night event. Starting in the lightweight division, we have Renato Moicano versus Jai Herbert. Moicano is a minus 250 favorite. Should he be that big of a favorite in this one, though?
So Renato has fought really tough competition. At 145, he's fought Jose Aldo, Brian Ortega, the Korean Zombie, Calvin Kattar. Like, he's fought really good opponents, but he's up a weight class for this fight. He's at 155. So he's going to be fighting Jai Herbert, who has a really good reach advantage in this fight. He's got a 5-inch reach advantage. This is going to be the longest opponent that Renato has ever faced in the UFC, which to me is interesting. But if you look at his striking metrics, he has good striking volume. He's landing over 5 significant strikes per minute. He has good striking defense on a rate basis. But like I said, a lot of these stats are from a lower weight class with opponents who aren't as long. So that's interesting to me. So I don't know if I'd be too comfortable laying all the juice on him in this fight, but he definitely should be the favorite because he has fought really elite competition.
All right, up next, a welterweight bout between Tim Means and Nicholas Dalby. A smaller line in this one with Means as a minus 137 favorite. So who do you like in this bout?
Yeah, so looking at the striking metrics for this fight, Tim Means has much better metrics. The strikes absorbed to landed ratio is solid for Means, but it's negative for Dalby. So I'm looking over these numbers, and it really points towards Tim Means. I think he's landing about 5 significant strikes per minute. He's only taking about 3 per minute. Like, that's a pretty good ratio. So I'd look at Tim Means for this fight.
All right, moving on to a featherweight bout between Andre Fili and Daniel Pineda, with Fili as the big minus 230 favorite. Now, if you like him and you want better odds, you can get him to win by KO, TKO, or DQ at plus 225. So do you think that's a likely outcome?
So Pineda, he has a really interesting story. He got released from the UFC, and now he's back on his second stint. Like, he really worked his way back. He had a really impressive win over Herbert Burns in his return fight. It was like a big upset. He looked great because Burns was a top prospect, and he just looked phenomenal in that fight. But he got knocked out in his last fight by Cub Swanson. There's no shame there. Like, Cub Swanson's a really good fighter. He's really experienced. So Pineda looks like he made a lot of improvements in his game, again, in that Burns fight. But he has been knocked out. He's coming off a knockout, and Philly has the ability to record a knockout. So that is a realistic way to get the money line down. So yeah, that's definitely an option.
All right, moving up the card to a bantamweight battle between Raoni Barcelos and Timur Valiev. Now, Barcelos is a minus 230 favorite. If you like Barcelos but don't want to lay that juice, how about looking at him in DFS at 8,800?
Yeah, I really like Barcelos in DFS this week. He has solid striking and grappling volume. He's 5 significant strikes per minute, 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. Like, those are good numbers. So he's a good fantasy scorer because of that. He's scored over 110 DraftKings fantasy points in 3 out of his 5 UFC fights. I mean, that's very good fantasy scoring. And he's safe in this fight, too, because he's a sizable favorite on DraftKings Sportsbook. He's over a minus 200 favorite. So I think if you're going to build around somebody in DFS, like, Barcelos is a good choice at 8,800.
All right, now on to the co-main event, which is a heavyweight bout between Tanner Boser and Ovin St. Preux. Now, Boser comes in as a minus 177 favorite. Do you expect him to take this one?
So this fight's at heavyweight, and heavyweight fights can be unpredictable because they're so big and they hit really hard because there's more force behind their punches because they weigh so much. It's not like a lighter weight class where guys can kind of like go back and forth and trade punches. Like, at heavyweight, if you land flush, like, there's a good chance you're going to knock your opponent out. So OSP, he doesn't have good striking metrics. He's only landing about 2 significant strikes per minute, and he's taking about 3 per minute. So that's kind of ugly, but he has a reach advantage in this fight. He's really long. He's got an 80-inch reach, which is 5 inches more than Boser. And all it takes is one punch at heavyweight. So if you actually look at the fight pops on DraftKings Sportsbook, OSP by KO or TKO is plus 750. Like, that's not a bad, outside bet because OSP, half of his wins are by knockout. So plus 750 on DraftKings Sportsbook, I'd maybe consider that.
Okay, well, in the main event, Cyril Gane and Alexander Volkov face off in another heavyweight bout. Gane sits as a minus 155 favorite. Is he your favorite too?
Yeah, so Cyril Gane is an incredible looking prospect. Like at heavyweight, sometimes you don't get a lot of skill or athleticism at heavyweight, but Gane is the exception. Like, he's chiseled, he moves so well, he's so light on his feet. is a really technical kickboxer, and he's great at keeping range. And that's interesting to me, the range aspect in this fight, because Volkov is really long. He's 6'7". So Gon does have a slight reach advantage, even though he's shorter. So that's really interesting to me. It's like, is Gon going to be able to keep his range in this fight against a guy who's really tall? So ultimately, I think I'm going to go with Gon because he's so athletic and well-rounded. And Volkov's takedown defense has been a little leaky at times, and Gon is able to get the fight to the ground if he's not having too much success in the stand-up. So I'd look at Gon.
Okay, well, finally, we mentioned DFS a little earlier when we were talking about the Barcelos Valle bout, but what's your favorite way to attack this slate in DFS?
So we talked about Barcelos before at 8,800. He's got good striking and grappling volume, which makes him a good fantasy scorer. He scored over 110 DraftKings fantasy points in over half of his UFC fights. And he's safe because he's a good favorite on DraftKings Sportsbook. And Cyril Gane is 8,700, so he's a little bit cheaper than Barcelos. I think Gane's a good fighter to build around as well because, like we were just talking about, he's a great prospect. He's well-rounded. He has really good defense. Fights smart. He's good. He's great at keeping his range, and he does have power, even though he tends to go to decision a little more than you'd like. So I'd look at Barcelos at 8,800 and Gane at 8,700.